Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, panelists, and members of the audience. Thank you for joining us for this evening's webinar. At this point, I would introduce the President of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Professor Prakash Prasad. Professor Prasad would also be this evening's moderator. Professor?
Good evening, Sitaram, Salam, Buenos Dias, and welcome to all the panelists and the viewers also to this critical and important topic of moving from traditional to innovation, or from moving from one cultural stream to another and the mixing thereof. This evening, we are extremely fortunate, actually, to have a really wonderful and distinguished set of panelists. Each in his own right can be viewed as some type of icon in this country. They're all known locally and internationally. So they are Mr. Rishi Roland Gayadeen of the famous Gayatones Orchestra, which have been back for some time. What we're doing, I think they're all well known, so I don't want to go into much details about their, bios, etc. They're well known. We also have Nishad Meru, the baby Nisatore, again, who is a champion singer, right? Well known again and a winner of a lot of competitions. We have with us also Dr. Sharda Patesa from the famous Patesa family. Sharda herself is a scholar and musician and also international performer. We have Ricky Jai, who is known here and everywhere. And I'm not too sure if he's here in Trinidad or in the States, but he's here on the cyberscape. And he's well known, right? A fantastic figure. So, and also finally, Mukesh Baburam, who we all know as a famous man, but most famous for his laughter on the radio. So I want to welcome each and every one of you. This here is an informal sort of discussion, and the intent is to look at what is happening, give some ideas to the way forward, and there's more going to be discussion that other things will follow, because we do live in a multicultural country, and we, how do we have fusion? Some music is fusion and cultural fusion without being totally absorbed. So what I will do, if as I'm with the panelists, I will ask this sort of general question, and anybody can start first. Is music fusion a good thing?
Yes, I believe it is a good thing. It brings different cultures together. So yes, it is a good thing.
Ricky,
well, I have lived my life in fusion. Growing up in an East Indian family, being influenced by East Indian music, but also being surrounded by the culture of Trinidad and Tobago, calypso, steel pan, and soca music. All of these elements have gelled together to bring a fusion chutney, soca chutney. So fusion is a great thing, and it's not something that we can really stop. It's not something that we can prevent. It's a natural happening. It's something that just happens on its own. It's like an alien form adapting to its environment, and that's what fusion is all about. East Indians have come to Trinidad and Tobago from way back when, and we landed here. Our ancestors, our forefathers, we landed here, everything intact. But as time passed on, the beat of the island, the whole rhythm of the island was only natural to influence what we did and how we did it. In the 70s, we saw it with Sundar Popo coming with Nani and Nana, and from then onward, fusion has been the name of the game. So fusion, it's inevitable.
Okay. Well, on a slight different note, nuclear fission, we should produce power. Now they're going for nuclear fusion, which is better for producing power, but we won't talk about that. Sharda, what's your view?
I was actually curious as to your question of why ask if it's a good thing? Because like Ricky, I mean, I find that I've grown up in a family, right, that moved from very authentically classical Indian music to fusion. Inevitably so, because the audience for it is small, for classical Indian music as well. And fusion forms in sense, in the way that I have, in the way that I understand it, it has to happen because of the landscape that we're in. And I'm always curious as to the question of whether it's good or bad.
Okay, I will answer that shortly because I decide why I ask it. But Mukesh, what are your views?
Well, fusion is natural in a country like Trinidad and Tobago. And I believe most countries of the world now have becoming, they have mixed population, cosmopolitan, in fact. So fusion is natural. But there's always a fear factor in fusion. Maybe not so much today, but for instance, when Lord Shorty I came up with soca, fused Indian rhythm with calypso, many calypsonians did not like that. He fused it because they were fearful. Because there is a fear factor with certain groups when it comes to fusing music. How would you accept a music that has been sidelined, not being part of the culture of Trinidad and Tobago, to be part of yours? For example, when this country became independent in 1962, the national culture was steel band, limbo, and calypso. That was decided upon by first generation Trinidadians who were Grenadian before, who never knew. For Dr. Eric Williams, parents were Grenadian. Carl Hodgson Phillips, parents were Grenadian. Almost the entire cabinet, their parents came from Grenada and St. Vincent. They may not have known Central Trinidad. They may not have known the culture of South Trinidad. And they sat down in Port of Spain and decided that the culture of Trinidad and Tobago is only steel pan, limbo, and calypso. So it would be difficult when you have sidelined, negated, neglected a certain part of the culture, that when Lord Shorty came up with soca, that Calypsonians themselves were resentful of the soca, they were fearful. Because this is a culture that was sidelined. You're bringing it up in 24 at this time. So fusion, if there is non-acceptance, I don't want to say animosity, within certain quarters, say within the Indian population to fusion, it has to be understood also. There are those of the artists who feel that fusion will work for them, and naturally, they will go for it. And there are those who feel fusion will work against them, and they will not be for it. So personally, we live in a cosmopolitan country, and to me, fusion comes naturally.
Nishad, what are your views?
First of all, good evening once again to everyone who is locked on, and it's a pleasure to be a part of this very distinguished panel. I think one of the best words that I've heard used to describe fusion so far is inevitable. And not just because of the diverse mix of cultures that we have in Trinidad, but because the world itself is so more connected now. It's not like the days gone by when people had to depend on the radio or the television, the limited programming to hear what was happening in music. Now you could pick up your phone and you could hear the music from a different part of the world at the touch of your fingertips. And people are now more exposed to different musical influences in a much more easy way. And if you really look at music, at its very definition, music itself is a fusion. Music is a fusion between instruments. It's a fusion between melody and percussion. It's a fusion of music itself is fusion. So to me, I think it is inevitable, and especially in a diverse, multicultural society like ours, it is something that has to be widely accepted, or at least presented in a way where people accept it. And that is an important part of the evolution of the art form, I believe.
All right. So what you all are saying, right, which I understand, that fusion is inevitable. I think we all accept that. I think you also said it's an evolution. Once people mix is you have this evolution. The answer Sharda's question, why I'm asking, is that every one of you had assumed that Indian music is fusing with what Mukesh said, Trinidad music. Let me just take a step back, right? So for instance, in classical Indian music or Hindu music, whatever you want to do, the mridang was the percussion instrument. That's what they played, right? Under Muslim influence, the tabal, as it's called in the Middle East, became the tabla. So it was an innovation. Now the mridang did not find itself in the Middle East, but the East Indians accepted the tabla and it's become integral part of Hindustani music now, Bollywood music, whatever you want, right? So the question I'm asking, the reason I'm asking it is, which is the greater force? To put it more bluntly for Trinidad, should we look at saying, hey, steel pans should be played in temples, as opposed to the tassa being played in carnival? So what I'm saying, so you understand what I'm asking now, that we need to understand the mechanisms. And I would just start by saying, to put it, that evolution comes along, is gradual changes until there's revolution that brings about big changes. So in that context, that's why I'm asking, so what are the guidelines? So we accept is inevitable, but is it useful to look at both sides? And is it useful to set some limits before we go to some more technical music questions itself? So I will pause there to get some views. And let the people talk. It's not a classroom, I have to ask people. Can you just let this flow, right, please?
I just want to ask you one question, Professor. How do you regard the steel pan?
Me?
Yeah.
How do I regard it?
Yes. How do you regard the steel pan? Is it a musical instrument?
It is a musical instrument. And I'll tell you, I don't like it. I don't like tassa either. I think tassa is very noisy. I don't like it also. So I'm saying it's nothing to do where it came from.
Well,
what I can tell you is
like or dislike. Like or
yes.
dislike of the tassa.
Yeah, no, it's noisy. I don't like noisy instruments. Maybe, look, I have grown up and I make no apologies for it. I came from a Hindu home. My family came from, over 200 years of Pandits from India. We know where they are, right? So my thing, I was immersed in Indian culture, Indian music. I make no apologies for that. I don't listen to any kind of music. I'm aware of other kinds of music by research, what I'm doing. So the steel pan is fine, it's an instrument, just as the harmonium, just as the sitar, just as the tassa, just as African drums. And I've worked with Peter Telfer before also.
The reason why I ask you that is that an instrument, right? Regardless of what instrument it is, it creates music. So like a steel pan. Let's say Johan Chakari decides to do an album for Diwali on steel pan. He would be able to play it in a temple, because at the end of the day, it would be a bhajan that he would be rendering on an instrument. So you made a comment just now there about steel pan being played in a temple, and really and truly, any instrument can be played in any church, mandir, mosque. It doesn't matter really. An instrument really holds no. It doesn't have any bearing to a religion or a race, a nationality, or otherwise. We are fortunate in Trinidad and Tobago to be the creators of an instrument in the 21st century, which is the steel pan. We are the only country that has that right. That we could boast about that. And so the steel pan for me is a very, very significant instrument, even though it's used predominantly in carnival and carnival based events. But in other places, if you hear the steel pan rendering a Bach or any other symphony, or let's just say Indian song, Jab Koi Baat or something, it is mind blowing. And I have been in India, and I have seen the steel pan blowing away people with with Indian songs, Bollywood songs, with the renderings. So the steel pan is something that we have to look at it very, very carefully and treat it with a little more significance, a little more special, and not think of it only as a carnival instrument. It's an instrument. It's an instrument. It can be used in any form, any place, anytime, anywhere. It all depends on who's playing the song or the music on the instrument at the time.
Well, that's why I started by saying I think you seem to be under the presumption that I'm against it. That's why I said about the tabla and the tabla being totally absorbed with the music. So I think so. We understand. I'm not against steel pan. Right?
I don't want anybody to think that you're against it.
Huh? What's that?
I don't want anybody to think that you're against it.
No, I'm not. That's why I gave the example, right? And to verify that point, there are two things I'm doing now, right? There's one, actually, I'm working on making what I call, maybe since there's a G pan, a B pan, by certain a small pan that you can place it in a temple. So it blends in with the ethos, etc. Because normally that's how it's done. So, but anyway, like I said, I agree with that. The instrument is an instrument. It could be used in everything. And in fact, just to remove any bias, as you said, a lot of instruments being used today in Indian music are not Indian instruments. You know that.
Correct.
Harmonium, right?
Even the harmonium.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, interestingly, the Sikh recently asking some Sikh fellows saying, remove the harmonium from the Golden Temple. But anyway, we won't go there. But if you look at some of the new bhajan singers, right? Like Ankit Batra and Padishi Oham, etc. They actually sing bhajans with guitar, which is not a traditional Indian instrument. So that I'm saying, so we not say the instrument is tied to any particular kind of thing, but it came somewhere. But anyway, I guess let's see other people's point of view. The original thing is, which way should this flow? Should it not flow both ways? To simplify that discussion.
Professor, you serve food in a temple, but it's not every food you serve in it. Not every food. You serve other food in a temple. You play music in a temple. Not every instrument you will play in a temple. There are no sada instruments really. But if there is a concert and there is need for a steel pan in a temple, of course, it's a concert. Steel pan. I'm sure the steel pan that Ricky Jai heard in India was not in a mandir. It would have been on the streets or in a concert. Nothing is wrong with steel pan music, it sounds sweet. But there is a place for everything. For instance, the Parang Association of Trinidad and Tobago objected to being steel pan being played in Parang. It will spoil the people Parang. Nobody raised a fuss about that. Had an Indian organization or a temple said the same thing, you would have the accusation of race and a number of other things, right? So it's according to who says it and where it is being said. I am saying, in as much as they serve food in a mandir, but you don't serve every food. You will play instruments in a mandir, but not every instrument. It is not conducive. I'm trying to get the correct word. But if there's a concert, definitely. Would you play harmonium in a church? I'm not speaking of the Presbyterian church that came out of Hinduism, Hindus converted. Would you go by Pastor Coffee and play harmonium? Or one of these big churches? Why only steel band and mandirs? Why not harmonium and dholak in the big churches? The same instrument? That's my point.
So that's the question I'm asking. Why not both ways flow? That's the thing I'm asking. Why, the fusion is in one direction, being pulled in one direction. But anyway, let's continue. Sharida, you want to say something now?
No, I'm just listening to the conversations, and it's a very complex argument. think a lot of it has to do with the history of the country, the politics. A lot of music is also about the optics. Okay, let's use the example of a steel pan in a temple. I think it really is dependent on the way that it's played. There was certain pitches, certain timbres that are more conducive for particular kinds of music as well. That's the way I see it, and your preference, right? And it really just boils down to that. And this is drawing on my own experience, for example, moving away from that temple discussion. When people ask me to perform, for instance, previously I used to get a lot of requests that they always want to see sitar with pan, because it's something that visually has always been there. The sound as well has always been the known merger. But I have refused time and time again to do performances because my music is different. My sense of the music is different. I'm not saying that I'm not going to include pan in it, but not every one of my compositions are done with a pan in mind. I compose differently. So for a long time, I had a bit of a fight with that. Whenever I was asked to play, and I would just outright refuse it, not giving a reason in many instances. But I think a lot of it has to do with the way that we conceptualize what a national sound should sound like, as well as what that, visually it should look like. So, but again, I think it's a really complex and deep argument that needs to be fleshed out. But as far as my thinking about fusion goes, is that I think that any thinking musician, any musician that is constantly moving, and I'm just thinking musically moving, mentally moving, experimenting with different ideas, because that's the way I think about music. Experimenting with different ideas is only going to be natural.
Rishi, you have an orchestra. So you have been orchestra man a long time now. What are your views? Because I mean, there's a variety of instruments you use, right?
Yeah, well, I lost you guys for a little bit, so I wasn't hearing exactly what Ricky was saying. But yeah, in Trinidad, I grew up playing East Indian music. When I joined Gaia Tones at the age of 12, tabla, dolak, the works. Strictly Indian music we played, but as the time went by, Trinidadian people we got into chutney, and growing up here in the soca, I love soca music. Being an East Indian and living in Trinidad, I love soca music. So, we tend not to want to just stay in that little circle. As East Indians living in the West Indies and in Trinidad, we wanted to explore. So yeah, we started to use a lot of the I play music with pan already. We using tassa, we using the dolak, we using the harmonium, everything we use. Yeah.
But in your case, you say the pan is being fused in an Indian orchestra.
Yeah, we up till 2 weeks ago we played in a concert and we did fuse the pan with East Indian music. I played in a concert with Nishad Meru, and he brought in the pan to do a solo, and the crowd accepted very well.
Yeah, and that answers the question I'm asking. Should the East Indian music move to be absorbed within the calypso and the English music or the other way around, or both should occur. That's the fundamental question we're asking. So,
I have
Nishal, you
an
want to ask? You
interesting view
want to jump
here.
in there?
Yeah, I have an interesting view here. And Professor, I'm not sure if this particular example of using pan in the temple is something you had planned to use in advance, or if that's just off the top of your head. But I feel like that is actually a brilliant example to use. And the reason for that is because we have to keep in mind that the steel pan is the national instrument of Trinidad and Tobago. And I mean, maybe this might be the white elephant in the room for some people who might be listening, but a lot of people seem to associate pan with African culture and African music, or the African elements of Trinidad music, when in reality, from my understanding, is really Trinidad and Tobago. And while I agree with what everyone is saying, there's a particular way it must be presented if we want to include a steel pan in a temple. For me personally, nothing would make me happier than to walk in a temple one day and see a steel pan there playing harmoniously together with the harmonium and the tabla and that kind of thing. And if we try to draw these lines of segregating certain instruments because we look at it a certain way, to me that goes against what we are coming to the temple for in the first place, which is to learn about acceptance and tolerance. And the steel pan itself is a very interesting instrument because we could speak about that infiltrating into other parts of local culture because it is a national instrument, as opposed to if we talk about a harmonium in a church. A harmonium isn't really a national instrument of Trinidad and Tobago, so I don't think it will be treated with the same regard. I don't know if regard might be the right word, but the point I'm trying to make is that we have to be the ones to really to create that interest and to create that acceptance when it comes to steel pan. And the more places I feel like we could include it in our culture in the right way, tastefully, respectfully, however, not in any way to spoil the music, as some people would like to say. I think that is one of the first steps to really stamping the steel pan internationally even further than it's already been done. So just to kind of sum up, I have no problem seeing a steel pan in the temple. As much as I would love to see a harmonium in the church, I kind of still understand why it might be a little more difficult to happen, because like I said, the steel pan is a national instrument which is supposed to represent us all, whereas the harmonium really came from a different part of the world. It isn't really associated with Trinidad and Tobago, while it's a part of what we do.
Thanks. I just want to remind viewers that you can text your questions to Ghansham and we will answer them. But I think, Nishal, you're saying something that hits to what I was asking about acceptance. So what we're saying, so do you have to be from a country, created in a country to be accepted? So for instance, this points to that probably the politics that Ricky Jai was pointing out to, and Sharda also, right? And I guess others to less extent. When does something become truly native? Let's use that word, right? Native. So for instance, that East Indians have been here 177 years, right? Europeans probably 500 years. Right? People African descent, what, 300-400 years. I'm not a historian. But when does it become acceptable? When does, if harmonium has been in Trinidad for 177 years, it wasn't created here. And by way of information, this came from a distinguished professor at UTT, Chogdas, Professor Liverpool, who pointed out to me at discussions, and we are good friends, a few weeks ago, that the steel pan actually was invented by a Chinese fellow from Woodbrook. It's in the Guardian, 1940s Guardian. So that just for information, people don't know that generally speaking. Okay, but when does the instrument, so it comes to the idea of acceptance, and this is what I'm asking again. Is acceptance a one-way street, or is acceptance a two-way street? Mukesh, I see you want to say something there.
Let me just come in again. My objection, and not objection, but reservation, is not based on race or who bring it from where. A Bhutan group in Amandura seated. Would you be seated and play a steel band? I'm thinking of the ambience. Is it conducive? Would you be seated with your pan and playing the pan on the ground. I am saying if there's a concert in a mandir and you need to bring a steel band, bring it. I love pan music. Though I find the whole band, I said pan, not band, I find the band has been noisy. It's still pan to me. It's beautiful music. I have no objection. I am speaking about, is it conducive in a mandir? Are we just forcing ourselves because we call it the national instrument? Because it is the national instrument, we must bring it inside the mandir. Is it acceptable? Would it add to the environment? Would it add with the music? Would it add to the spirituality of the mandir? My view right now is no, because all the musicians are seated in the bhajan group. The Baba is seated, and to have a pan man stand up there, it would not add to it. It would be a distraction rather than an addition. Go ahead.
So this is what I'm asking. That's about innovation flowing one way only, because instead of trying to accommodate it, the other way around, should research be done on a pan to make it acceptable. Like I said, I wouldn't play a tassa in a temple also. That's my view. It's noisy. All right, I said so. Tassa is noisy. You need to adjust it. So what I'm saying, if we say it's a two-way flow, then there must be some active work, active research, effort to say, how can I make this, this instrument to accommodate, the ethos or the culture, the performance culture there. And this is what it's been interesting. These are sort of questions that we need to answer, to drive policy forward. And just again, to point out, right, that in the Swaha schools, we actually teach people pan, together with the dholak and the harmonium, etc., right? But what we say, it has to be a two-way street. Should pan not be simplified? Should it not be adapted for all circumstances in Indian music? And this is where the innovation takes place, not only for one direction, but the other direction. I would love to hear some views.
The whole idea of this mine and yours, which I think is part of what you're pointing to, right? Is an old argument in music studies. The way that people take something to be their own versus, so there's this us and them argument. And I think that we as a nation we're still in that, I would say, formative stage where we're still trying to work that out. And the politics still doesn't help much. And your question about when does a thing become native, I think only time really would tell.
What I'm asking is that should we not have a sort of concerted planned effort in some direction? That's what I'm asking. And is it useful to do that? Let things happen as they may.
I think it depends also on the population's ability to accept it, whether we are ready or not. That's part of the thing, because it's, yes, we had those arguments about harmonium in schools. We had those arguments about steel pans in schools, that kind of thing. We've now hopefully moved past those arguments. I really believe that it's, while we may implement policy, we have possibly we need some more research as to what the population thinks about it, because we're still very divided along those lines. The way that we see instruments, the way that we view music. Because even I remember when I was doing some research on chutney and chutney soca, the way that people defined those forms themselves suggested a divide even within that community. Some people said that the fusion chutney was about traditional instruments. Some people said chutney was about using a guitar, using a harmonium, a dhola, you know. So this, it was that divide. Some people said that it was about the language. So we do need some more research work in that.
Any comments again?
I don't know, Ricky always has some interesting views on it.
I am just taking a glance back here at the flyer, which says, you know, the reason why we are here today is to listen to somebody's dog barking. Seriously, the reason why we're here today is to discuss, you know, tradition to innovation, and somewhere along the line there, I feel we've kind of just stepped away from what we are all here for today. When we start to go into temples and when we start to talk about what's right for the pundit or the audience and everything else, to me, it's a little bit off the course of the topic that we were all invited here for. Tradition to innovation. What are we talking about? Are we talking about Indian tradition and the ways that we have innovated what was to where it is now? If you ask me, you know, when I started to sing, and what chutney was, my first chutney job was in a boatyard in a place called Sagittarius in Barataria. And, you know, Cappy, as the guy was known back then, when he hired me as a Calypsonian because I was Ricky Jai, the Calypsonian. I wasn't the chutney singer at that point in time. And Rishi Gayadeen was there with me at that time, and Rishi would agree with me. When we walked into Sagittarius, everybody else who was there, Anand Yankaran, Hanif Mohammed, Ramraji, Boy Basdev, the list was long. And I was the last on the show because being the odd East Indian or Indo-Trinbagonian in the show, here you have, when the guy called me, I said, listen, I don't sing chutney, you know. I'm a Calypsonian. So you're calling me to sing in a show where it's predominantly chutney. And his words were to me is that you are Indian. And you're an Indian entertainer. And I would like to have you in my Indian event. And I said, okay, if you're comfortable with that, then fine. I went to the show and I took with me the first job. Ian Dure, we had a Casio keyboard. And that was it. Me and a Casio keyboard and a rhythm machine. Everybody else on that show was seated for their performance. Anand, Ramraji, Boy, Hanif, everybody sat down there with their harmonium, dholak, dantal, majira, and they did their performance. Here comes Ricky Jai, the game changer. In that particular point in time, this is where things change. This is where the innovation starts to happen. I am the Indian, the Trinidadian Indian, who is doing calypso, soca, and going now heading into chutney. I have no chutney songs. I have not recorded any chutney songs so far. But I accept the invitation and I went in. Was it wrong for me to go and disrupt a scenario where everybody was seated and singing and just not working the crowd and not inviting the crowd to sing along and that sort of thing? Because when I went there, that's what they were doing. Every singer would come up, ladies and gentlemen, so and so and so. Sing the song for half an hour and come off. Ricky J comes up and says, hey, how you feeling? How you doing? Put your hand in the air. Let's have a good time. Let's do this. This is the fusion. This is the Calypsonian. This is the soca artist that I am now coming into in this arena. After that, the next week, the guy says, I want to tell you something. You were a tremendous hit. Everybody like you. I want to book you for the next show. So I said, no problem. Next week, I hire Rishi Gayadeen, Roland Ali Bokas, Imzak Sukarali. Rishi laughing because he knows, right? He was there with me, and Rishi has been with me from day one. And there we started to change the way chutney shows from then would be viewed going forward. From then on, big bands started to come into the scene. Not so, Rishi? After that, big shows on the highway, you know, Bina Sangeet started to get jobs, this one started to get jobs, Triveni, everybody started coming in. It reached a point where suddenly the bands were the highlights of the shows more than the artists. The point I'm trying to make is this. Innovation, tradition, you know, it goes hand in hand, right? It goes hand in hand. And when you live in a country like Trinidad and Tobago, you can choose to be singular or you could choose to be plural. I choose to be plural. And I will always be plural. I will always love and be a part of everything that is Trinidad and Tobago. Yes, I am East Indian. Yes, I'm a Hindu to my heart. Yes, I love my tradition. Yes, I love my tasa. I love everything that there is about East Indian culture. Up till yesterday when I posted, you know, I was in India on an elephant riding, enjoying the sights and everything about India. All right, that and you know, big up to the people who came on the ship, and to the people who had to change their names, change their religion, and everything else to endure to become first-class citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. But you know, all of that, you know, there's something about being a Trinidadian that if you choose to be a singular entity, then you are lost. I choose to be different. I've chosen to be different over the years, and I continue to be different, and I will always be different. I am not going to say that East Indian music is better than anything else, or anything else is better than that. I love everything about this country. I love everything about the culture, and I embrace everything that it has to offer. So in order to innovate, you have to accept. You can't innovate if you don't accept what is in front of you. You're going to be stuck in a stereotype sort of situation where, you know, you think that sitting down and playing an instrument and sitting down and singing is the correct way. But that's what you've been taught until I came along and I show everybody, hey, you don't have to sit down. You could work the stage. You could get up. You could be innovative about how you do things. Similarly, you take what's in Trinidad, you could take the steel pan and make it, you know, innovate with it and incorporate it into what you're doing without really damaging the fabric of who you are or what you are. That's just my, you know, the way I look at it.
Nishad, you want to add something?
Yeah, I agree with what Ricky is saying. Like I would have said before, acceptance is important in innovation, because innovation is really change, and change is the only constant. And in order for us to innovate and to change, I think it's important to know what are all the tools that are available for us to use, and to explore what are the options we have to explore. You know, like Ricky said, basically he looked at what was available to him, which was completely different from what was happening at that time, and he used that to his advantage. I think that is a principle that could be extended, you know, in many other ways. So to me, like you know, we talking about the pan, like I mentioned in my previous contribution, I think the pan is an instrument that we need to pay particular attention to because it's something that we own. It's something that is a part of our identity. So I think it needs to be treated differently in terms of how we view other instruments. Not that other instruments should not be accepted as well, but this is ours and we need to own it if we want other people to appreciate it as well.
I think the question I was asking, I think Ricky Jai, innovation, he talked about innovation in performance. We started talking about innovation in music, and performance is part of music. I understand that. But we were trying, what I'm saying, so that is one part, and we won't, separate that. So Ricky Jai has been very successful at innovating in performance. He went on stage, he danced, he mixed with the audience, etc. That is performance.
Not at all, not at all. Not
You weren't performing?
Not only performance, Professor.
Take a step by step.
Over the years, it's not only performance. I have actually changed the way people have recorded chutney music over the years. Rishi would know that we changed the speed of music, we changed the instruments that was being put into the music and so forth. So I just focused on performance to give you an example of it, but in terms of innovation, in terms of how we created the music as well. Because if you listen back to the music from the 70s coming up to where it is now, the speed of the music, the instruments that were used back then to now, it's totally different. Totally different.
Go to the example you gave us as performance. I'm not speaking about other part, and we take that part about innovation in other aspects, and that's fine. I think let's get over this idea that pan should not be part of Indian music. I don't know how it became central to the discussion. The discussion is this: that fusion is taking place in a multicultural country, right? And what are we implicitly assuming? So, for instance, that this is the culture or the musical culture of the country, right? Or a particular part. That's what I'm asking. And should we not look at the other part also? Which one should be fused within which one, or immersed, or whatever? That's the question I'm asking, and whether there's any thought going towards that. That's what I'm asking. So let's step aside from this steel pan. I think it's going, it seems to be a confusing and conflicting issue, right?
Well,
and the general thing, which one?
Aside from the steel pan, Professor, over the years, we have seen a lot of calypsonians, especially in the 80s, where a lot of fusion was taking place with soca music. Post Rashoti I, when he sang, change the essence of carnival to a groovy bacchanal. When he did Indrani, came within, Om Shanti Om. The success of what he was doing, it infiltrated many of the other Afro entertainers in Trinidad and Tobago, from Scrunter to Baron to Poser to Rootsman to you look at Byron Lee and the Dragonaires. If you go back to the 80s, 90s era of soca music, there is a lot of music that was created with that Indo-Caribbean feel, that Indian element to it. So if we look at what was happening with music across the board, there has been a lot of cross experimentation. There has been a lot of people working with what we have and what they have, and making it into something that everybody likes. Not everything is going to work all the time. Not everything that you fuse is going to work all the time. Let's take a kid like Nival Chetlal, for instance. He's a fantastic entertainer, singer, and he is able to do so many different things with his talent. He's able to fuse Western music, Indian music, and everything else into what he's doing. And I see what he's doing on a national scale, and people have seen what he's doing similarly to let's say what Mangal Patista was doing a while back when, you know, he was fusing Pantar, and maybe he's still doing, you know, I'm a little bit off the scene these days, but the point I want to make here is that, you know, in Trinidad, while we may not see things happening all the time, everybody is aware of what's happening on either side of the fence. And at some point in time, a lot of people are using all the elements into how they create. Sherwin Winchester, Destra Garcia, Marshall Montano, some of the biggest names in soca have all fused Indian music into what they do to bring it to the national fore. Call it innovation, call it what you want. It's happening. Innovation can only take place by somebody, by one person or persons saying, you know what, I want to make a change. I want to make something better. I want to do something different. If you're not doing something different, you're not innovating. It's standstill. You know. So if you're doing the same thing over and over and over, then you're not really innovating. You're just following tradition. You're just following customs. And if that's fine with you, and if you're happy with that, that's fine. But if you're like me, who likes to go over the edge and likes to do things differently, whether I succeed or I fail, at the end of the day, I want to think that, you know what, I tried to do something different to what was happening on a normal day. I tried to make a change. So I, Ricky Jai, tried to be the non-stereotypical East Indian in Trinidad, in the sense that I tried to be different and I tried to be seen different than the person who was appearing on Mastana Bahar or who was appearing on the Indian cultural pageant or who would end up in the Pichikari contest or something like that. I wanted to be different to that. Now, the persons who were entering those competitions, that's fine with them. That was the tradition. I choose to be different. I choose to be, as you would say, let's use the word innovative. I choose to be innovative. So the word innovative in itself is very, very loose, you know, very, very loose.
I understand that, having worked in innovation for many, many years. I understand that, but I think innovation brings about change, as you say. And I think I disagree with you when you say that traditional music, there's no innovation in it. I think you're totally wrong there. If you listen to music, there's always innovation. In fact, I just want to point out something that when Mangal started to innovate, he innovated by saying, can I fit an instrument that is not traditionally used in East Indian music? And we have to use language. So let's not use the language as division, us and them. Everywhere in the world is us and them. Let's, even Amartya Sen, the Nobel Prize winner, talked about that. So let's be aware of that. There's nothing wrong in that. We have to be aware. But he took it on and said, I'm going to take an instrument that is not traditionally used in East Indian music, and I'm going to use it in East Indian music. So that was flow one way, right? And this is the question I'm asking, right? And we'll come back to shortly. Should the flow not be both ways? I mean, you're saying that people have used it in various aspects of Indian culture, Indian beat or whatever, into calypso, etc. That's fine. I agree with you. People have a choice. So there's no issue of that. So we're not talking about people's choice. What is national, what is right, is what is wrong. We're talking about topic of innovation and in a broader sense. So think about that. And before I ask Mukesh a question, tell me, and I don't mean to be politically incorrect, but when is the last time, one of these singers, I mean, I know Marshall Montano in there with the Guru, etc., right? How many orchestras, or maybe you can answer that afterwards, after Mukesh, how many non-traditional Eastern musicians sing in Eastern music? You come back to that in a short while. But somebody asked a question, Mukesh, this Pichikari music fusion. Now forgive me, I'm a scientist, an engineer by nature. I'm a pundit, by vocation. We seek the truth. Whether it's pleasant or unacceptable, we must face the truth. And the answer, Rikijai's, question, that no innovation involves play. All all the scientific studies for that. There must be pay. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger said that no pay, no gain. But anyway, Mukesh, is Pichikari music fusion?
I will come to that. Let me just respond to Ricky a bit. I sang Calypso in a Hindu conference in the late 1980s or 1990s. In Naparima, I sang Calypso in another World Hindu. I sang Calypso in Diwali Nagar, not on the big stage. There was a stage somewhere, and I sang Calypso there. So I took Calypso with me. I'm a 3-time or 4-time Young King finalist in Calypso. I performed with Yankatang 10 in Calypso. I also performed with Massive Gosign 10 in Calypso. Right. Many time finalists of Calypso in these areas. So, but if I sing in Masana Bahar alone, I am as much as Trinidadian as anybody who sings soca, Calypso, parang, or anything. If I sing in Pichikari alone, I am very much a Trinidadian as anybody else. I don't have to prove that to anybody else. I was listening to an interview in just around 2000, 2001 on TTT. I don't want to call the names. And 2 persons of African descent decided which of the Indian population who sounds like a Trinidadian. Once in Basde Pandey, because you have human, and next one. A few years ago, went to another conference right here in Cuba. And a person who is not a Trinidadian, but working in the industry, deciding which Indian is a Trinidadian. It seems as though we have an identity crisis. If we sing Masana Bahar, we feel we're not Trinidadian. I am as much as Trinidadian as anybody out there. Let me go to Pichikari. Having been in Pichikari, and one of the reasons why I stopped at Pichikari is because I was chased from Calypso. I was the national culture of Trinidad and Tobago. When I started singing, it used to have confusion at UNC, so I was singing against UNC, and some people clapping, some people was come to hear me. And in 1997, I sang High Marks for Pandey. The same people who was to cheer me up started to boo me. From the time they hear the song, I was pelted in Port of Spain. From the time they announced my name, sometimes they say, Go Masana Bahar. And one time, the organizers of a show told me where to hide when I don't sing. So I could not sing in the national culture of Trinidad and Tobago because Eric Williams decided what is the national culture. He said, take steel pan, take Calypso, take limbo. That is your national culture. Let me leave that. Let me go to Pichikari. So I'm here in Pichikari. Is it innovation? I don't think so. Nor do I think Chutney Soca, because both use Bollywood melodies. One use it and add brass, and add a beat, and add something which is more innovation of musician who has to innovate. And the other side, Pichikari, use Bollywood music, but they deny much of the instruments. So they go on more traditional because of more harmonium and dholak and those instruments. They make other guitar thing. I think the last year or two, well, they had a full orchestra by popular name I forgot. Ranamui. All right, yes, good. So you see, commentary. Pichikari had to be more commentary. Commentary is more conducive in a Calypso style. Your movements on stage, what you see. There's no use to do a commentary, plenty Hindi, and at the end of it, people ask, so what are you singing about? What are you singing? You understand? They can't understand the song. So I have raised my concerns on Pichikari platform many times, many times. So what I am saying here is nothing new to those in the Pichikari. I have never been part of the administration. It's a very nice platform, but it doesn't meet, since it doesn't meet the criteria as being part of national culture, you will have problems with funding. And if Calypso is not funded, because Calypso tends to be bossing, and government have to fund it to keep it alive. And if you have taxpayers' money to fund Pichikari, then it will die. It will die. Like Calypso is only living on the treasury support, life support from the treasury. The tents are not making money. They are all bossing. So taxpayers are funding Calypso because it's national culture. And if Pichikari is not national culture, because our government does not decide national culture, mind you, the UNC was in power also, eh? And under the UNC, they didn't get any money also, right? In fact, the best time for Pichikari may have been on PNM. Joan Yule Williams to give some money. Under the UNC, I don't know what happened. But having said that also, coming to the music, taking Bollywood music. Now, when I never came from a musical background, but when I went into music, I decided I am going to create my own music. I am going to create my own melody. And in every single, and my song played in, when 103 was a totally Indian station, my song played a calypso, played for months on a Sunday morning on 103. On Sadro's program in the night, my songs played, you know, and all these things, commentary. So again, Pichikari Forum, there are certain things that needs to really upgrade, and that's number one. But upgrading comes with funding. Everything is money-based. Everything is money-based. If it's not money-based, it will collapse. And if it does not form part of national culture, which no government, because people like Dr. Ronald Munilal will go Calypso Fiesta, where they pong in the UNC, and he will stay for the whole program, but he has never attended one Pichikari program yet, right? And so, and there are other names, eh? You know, the Prime Minister then, Kamala Prasad, says, when the Calypso don't call for $1 million, to give it. Pichikari struggling, nothing, right? So, for Pichikari Forum to be relevant, it must be given that necessary life support. It must be recognized one. The innovation will come. I am not much of a Pichikari. I have been there making up numbers. My voice is not really suited. Because if the music go more traditional, because of blows they were getting from Hindu organizations, that who say they're going to bring Calypso in Pagwan, all kind of foolishness. You know, I was reading the list of entertainment for Pagwa or Holi in India. And it was no total. You had hip hop, you had Bhangra, you had a number of music from Western countries, and you didn't have no Chautal. But in Trinidad, they say Pichikari are going to kill Chautal. They're going to kill Chautal. So I've set up a canal with a Hindu organization. So they try to keep it as traditional as they can, which is not really to my liking and to my taste. But however, it is there. It is a forum. It should be supported. It should be recognized, and it should be given funding. Not much to say more than that.
Well, thanks. I think this is the issue Sharda was raising, that innovation is a set of factors that drive it. And this is what I'm asking for. If we don't have a national cultural policy, we don't. I mean, for instance, in Singapore, okay, the NGOs, cultural NGOs raise money, and how much they raise, the government will get an equivalent amount. So they say that culture is not our business. That's your business, and if you do it, you use it, we will help. All right. So what I'm saying, these are the questions. When we started the discussion, as I said at the beginning, is to help to inform national policy. This is what drives it. So it's fine to, say, well, fine, what happens, happens. Okay. I don't think, if we want to progress, we can't be that way. I mean, that's my view. So yes, it's good to perform. And I think performers, right, especially performers like yourself who have influence, must play a critical part in driving the discussion forward and having a path for innovation. We teach innovation at university. We don't tell students, do what you want. Let it happen. There are definite, sort of paradigms for getting innovation and getting being successful. So this was, the original intent well, it still is the intent of this discussion. That's why I kept on saying, which one drives, which way should innovation flow? And that would help to form and inform the policy and some issues that Mukesh has raised. So as we go forward, but Nishad, you wanted to say something? Somebody was asking a question to you also.
Would you mind repeating the question? I actually did not see it in the in the chat.
Then Mukesh, Ghansham, I'm not saying you want to Mukesh, but just want to Nishad. Is you can find that? I'm not seeing it.
There's
Yeah, to Ricky
this
Jai and to
this
Nishad.
question was to Ricky and Nishad. How can we achieve traditional to fusion Indian music?
Gentlemen.
Traditional to fusion Indian music. How can we achieve that? Firstly, in my opinion, I think that traditional, and when we say traditional, I assume that we are speaking about traditional chutney music, that particular genre. I think that that is a dying art form. There aren't many people from my generation who are still doing traditional music, and there's no continuation because and one of the reasons, I mean, I understand as well that one of the reasons for that is because there is a language barrier. Of course, a lot of the older folks, they speak Hindi, so it's easier for them to pen Hindi lyrics and that sort of thing. It's easier for a younger person to sit down and write English lyrics. In terms of the fusion, though, I think one of the ways in which we can do it is by having a mix between the Hindi lyrics and the English lyrics, because for some reason, that mix is always a very interesting flavor. It's interesting to the ear because it has the sound of the influences that we are accustomed to. It has the familiarity of some of the Hindi words, and we can still understand it because there's a bit of English there. So for me, it's something that we could try. It really boils down to the individual musician or the individual artist in terms of how they want to try to take the direction different in terms of the sound, in terms of the content, in terms of the lyrics. For me personally, I haven't really been involved in traditional chutney as much. I grew up really strongly rooted in Bollywood music, which was my first love. I really loved Bollywood music, and after that, I got into chutney and a bit of soca and you know that side of the music. I know Ricky would probably be a little bit more exposed to the traditional aspect because he would have rubbed shoulders with a lot of the older stalwarts and the foundation members from that fraternity. So maybe he would like to share his views at this point.
But Ricky, before I share the view, let me answer this also, right? We all know about Pradeep from there, this singer and lyricist, right? And he sang a lot of issues, of social issues, very popular. I'm asking, and also like if you recall in the Cooking Nights long time, when the fellas were full of spirits late in the night, when they got into extempo singing, right? They did do this sort of thing. So I'm asking, why can't, since you're a chutney soca man, to have some of these lyrics that impact positively? Or if you don't like the Indian example, look at this man, Bob Marley, and his genre of music that has more positive, lyrics, impact on society, right? Reggae. So why can't chutney do some
I'll
of that?
tell you something. I'll tell you something, Professor. A lot of what you are speaking about does exist. A lot of positive chutney music, a lot of positive chutney soca music. I myself have I have penned original songs with original melodies that we won Chutney Soca Monarch with, which were songs about celebrating the beauty of chutney music. It was all positive. It was very uplifting. But for some reason, and again, it goes back to the politics of it. These aren't the songs that the DJs want to play on the radio. They kind of see more of the bacchanal aspect of it, and they tend to stick down that road. And I don't know, for some reason they feel as maybe the positive lyrics aren't as palatable to the audience that they are catering for. But the music does exist. It is there. I myself have done it over all the years that I have been in Chutney Soca Monarch. I have always done original melodies. My last time in the Monarch, which was a few years ago, my song was actually written by Ricky Jai. And I feel like it's important for us to really maintain that originality in the music. And in terms of the traditional music, like I said, Ricky's the man to talk about that because I know too much about the traditional.
Over to you, Ricky.
I think your mic is muted.
Yeah, I'm no expert in traditional music. I just happen to be around the greats of traditional, you know. But you said something interesting there, Professor. You know, the greatness of the music of Bob Marley. I want us to really ask the question, why did Bob Marley's music cut like a knife through societies worldwide? It was because of what he was singing at the time. There was a whole black movement revolution. There was so much happening in the world with black movement at the time, and the lyrics that he penned at the time is still applicable today to a great extent. And his music has been able to transcend barriers and cross, you know, the boundaries where Chinese, Indian, Portuguese, everybody's singing Bob Marley's music. But when you live in a country like Trinidad and Tobago, and you use the reference of Bob Marley to ask why our music is not on the same level, to like what Nishad was saying there, I could present to you hundreds of songs that I've written, speaking of unity, speaking of peace, speaking of, you know, national pride and everything else that just doesn't get airplay. So we as entertainers, we have a battle that we face every time we put pen to paper, every time we put money into an investment. Are we going to do this because we just want to please a certain aspect of the society that doesn't buy the music, doesn't go to the shows, and who are only condemning and criticizing? Or are we going to create music that, hey, the DJ is going to like, the fed goers are going to like, and we can earn $1 from it? You know, it's a ticklish situation, and it's a very, very it's a place where artists find themselves sometimes. You want to do what's right, and you want to do the correct thing and the good thing, and you want to innovate properly or correctly, as you might say it, but it's not bringing any money to us. Now, let's take India, for instance. You know, you mentioned, you know, we tend to use India as a you know, the cornerstone of how we measure things in Trinidad, where Indian music is concerned. But the Indian producers in India, they have been copying Western music for generations, and nobody in Trinidad is saying anything about it. Many of the great songs that you listen to and you love and you enjoy and you sing along to, they are copy versions of songs that are from Western Europe or United States or Canada or England. Some of the biggest songs, Jabukoi Bat. I mean, I could give you a complete rundown of it, and nobody complains about the lack of innovation from India. But in Trinidad, condemn us, condemn, criticize, kill, you name it, you know.
I think you have a chip on your shoulder. Nobody's condemning and criticizing.
No. I have no chip on my shoulder. I swear to you, Professor, this artist have no chip on his shoulder. I swear to you. I've done what I have to do on my own accord, at my own expense. And coming back to what you were saying about the national scheme of things, I agree with you. And I said this in another interview recently, where the Calypso fraternity, they have a system in place where, I want to agree with Mukesh to a great extent here. The Calypso fraternity, they have mechanisms, they have protocols put in place for the education and continuation of the Calypso art form, the soca art form. There are workshops, there's all sorts of different things that happens on a yearly basis, on a grandiose scale all over Trinidad. However, when people speak about the deterioration of chutney soca or chutney music in Trinidad and Tobago, Has anybody ever stopped to ask why? Who's training the chutney artist? Who is educating the chutney artist? Who is giving the chutney artist a forum? How to write a song? What is the elements that you need to put into the song? Where is the school of thought put into place for these youngsters? I was fortunate. I had my grandmother and my great grandmother, and my mother used to tote me to all the barahis and the farewells and the weddings. So those melodies stuck in my head from small. I was able to regurgitate it back into music as I became a man. But for these youngsters who are now trying to follow in my footsteps or following the footsteps of Sundar or Soniman or Hanif, where is the school of continuation? So if we want to talk about innovation, what is the theme of our thing here today? Tradition to innovation, because I find we're stepping off the theme a lot in this conversation. How can we expect the young people to really innovate if they're not being taught? You know, you're a professor in a national university, and out of the multitude of students that will pass through the university, we would hope that one or two of them will innovate and create and make a change in the world, become a Elon Musk, a Bill Gates, a Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, a guy who trades on the stock market because he, different things, but innovation. But in our music, right, we have been doing this on our own merit. So give you a little credit sometimes.
No, I think again you seem to think that we're criticizing. We are not.
No, it's not criticizing. All I'm saying is that there needs to be, and maybe you can get it done with the government, Prime Minister Rowley, whoever is listening right now. Indian entertainment needs a proper forum. It needs proper direction. It needs proper education. People need to know the same rags that are being taught in India to create Bollywood songs or copy Western songs is the same thing that needs to be taught in Trinidad. And the one or two classes in the Indian High Commission is not going to do it. No, it's not going to do it.
You see, you think you're getting licks. I've been getting licks on this thing for a long while, and what I'm asking for today is part of it. This is part of it.
Make me the minister of culture, and I'll change things for you.
No, I'll carry you. No, this is part of the discussion. For instance, when I came in as president of UTT and I spoke to the music program in Upper, right? The professor there says, what we want, and this is, probably Ghanasham would verify this, that I said, we want people who can innovate like Ricky Jai. The professor of music of the National University of Trinidad and Tobago. So who is Ricky Jai?
Well, he probably came from somewhere he didn't know who is Ricky Jai. You can't blame the man.
Well, he going back where he came, because I started to say, this can't work here. It can't, right? But on the other hand, I've met, Ghanasham was part of this when we started in 2020, talking to the Indian sort of musicians. And they seem to be more, I'm going to use the word recalcitrant, more difficult to convince to get involved. So I said, look, nobody wants, it's a university. We need to break out the mold. If you want to, you're being paid to teach. Nobody in guru that people have to bow to you and bend to you and say, whatever. You're being paid, teach your children. We also said to them, look, you need to modify. You want to attain Saraswati Mata with music? Fine, go and meditate somewhere else. Or when you come here, no, I'm telling you these sort of things. I even think you get licks, I get more licks, or just as much. Anyway, I get licks also. I said, look, who is teaching how to write lyrics? I try to get that done. Nobody is interested. That's why we're having discussions. I said, how do we say we cannot go for classical? Just as I said, nobody's going to come to Trinidad to study classical English music when you could do it in Europe or the States. Who is going to come try to study classical Indian music? No, we have a unique culture here We need to, mix and develop lyrics, use all the cultural streams. But the Indian music teachers are just as resistant or more resistant. And that's why we are not making progress to the questions you asked, because I said we have to convince people that you can earn a living by it. You write lyrics, you get paid for it. There are people who write lyrics and get paid also, right? It's a business. How do you do these kind of things, right? But this is the problem in Trinidad, that the Indian side of it, in inverted commas, is just as resistant or more resistant to doing these sort of things, right? I mean, and this is the problem we face, and this is why I started all these discussions. Hopefully that we can get some sort of movement going. And movement would be a strong word to say we need to bring about change. This is the culture. And I mean, I just want to say just two things other than that. With regard to Bob Marley, I remember speaking to a Canadian professor. I said, well, he doesn't listen to Calypso. He said, well, doesn't listen to Calypso because Calypso is too topical. It talks about issues in Trinidad. Nobody cares about it. You may go in the diaspora and they will listen. But to hit a larger worldwide market, it has to have a universal appeal. And I think some of these things like Bob Marley does have that. We need to recognize that. And if we have, without criticizing anybody, if we have a positive message with a really nice, catchy beat and melody and stuff like that, it will carry. So all wouldn't, I agree with, I mean, I understand the issue. You're singing to earn a living, and that's fine. And you need to understand the market also. But what I'm saying is that, for it to expand beyond these some things we need to do. So, so the question is, I'm hopeful that when we go to the Minister of Culture, as you suggested, right, that we carry a team, right, who can, take this forward. And just I don't want to go back to PAN, but I've been speaking to universities in India, actually about using the PAN to teach, traditional music in India. And there are talks in progress because PAN is an instrument like any other instrument. And the tied to it is a commercial aspect. The more people use the PAN, and they produce PAN in Trinidad, the more money we get. So everything, there's this commercial aspect of it. Commerce, as you said, Ricky Jai, that commerce drives culture, but it's a two-way flow, so we have to understand that. So it's a complex issue, but I think we need to get discussion going. And Trinidad, people don't like to talk about things openly. Oh, we're afraid to say it, we step back in politics. No, we have to stop changing that. Change that, stop that. Sorry.
Mukesh is absolutely right in a lot of things that he said a while ago in terms of the one-sidedness of how culture is viewed in Trinidad and the funding for culture in Trinidad and Tobago. I myself have been in culture for the better part of 35 years, and I can safely say that the allocation that is given to one side of culture as opposed to the other is totally unbalanced. And if you want people to become innovative, then somebody has to fund it. Now, let's say I am funding myself. I am a totally self-funded artist for the last 35 years. I have done from barbecues to bazaars to fests, to whatever it took to raise money to propagate my brand. See the brand there? Yeah. My brand, my name, my music over the last 35 years. I have in great part done on my own. I must say that some corporate entities in Trinidad, Angostura, Carib, and a few others have come on board at different times in my career to assist me. But the point I want to make is this. If you really want innovation on a grandiose cultural level that you're speaking of, then the government has to come in and play a bigger part and recognize that, okay, the Indian or the Indo-Trinbagonian aspect of what we are doing is of great importance as well. It has much to offer. It's it has much to offer to the world, and it can't be left to be born on the shoulders of the artist alone. Because I'll be honest with you, we Indo-Trinbagonian artists, most of us from South. There are a few from Central and a few from the North and East and everything else. You running classes in Port of Spain, you expect me to leave South to come to a class in town? I don't have the money in the first place. I just speaking on a general level. Bring it to me. Bring the workshops to me. Don't tell me there's a workshop in Port of Spain and I live in Pinal. It costing me, I don't have money to buy groceries. I'm struggling to make that one record every year, that one song. And I'm speaking on a level for all the artists that I know personally. I may be one of the most successful Indo-Trinbagonian artists out there, but there are many of us who are not able to do a lot of the things that I would have done. And I'll tell you this, many years, I took all my money and put it into videos and music to the point where I have nothing in my pocket. I have nothing in the bank. All for culture, all for innovation, all for change, all for everything else. So we try but I think we need help. And I think the now generation needs help more than ever. If you want this innovation, tradition to innovation to be something more grandiose, to be something better than where I left it or where I met it. You know what I'm saying? Much more needs to be done. Much more needs to be put into the pot, and it can have a big effect on how things change, how lyrics are written, how management and how proper guidance can mold young artists and young entertainers to forge in the right direction towards what you were saying about how things can happen on a grandiose scale and become a Bob Marley or become a let's say a legend on the world scale. It ain't gonna happen just so. Trust me, it ain't gonna happen just so. We need that input from the government. We need that input from people in the know, not just for personal gain, but to say, hey, we want to put Trinidad on the map. We want to put the music of Trinidad and Tobago on the map. It has to happen on a scale like that. And to answer Gamshan's question here, is it more profitable to create fusion music in Trinidad and Tobago to reach a wider audience? Well, two things happen when you're an artist. One, you want to be the big fish in the small pond, or you want to be the small fish in the big pond. At some point in time, when you're the big fish in the small pond, you forget about the big pond. And you just start making music for the small pond. Because you wanna work, you wanna keep making, you wanna keep having jobs, and the fusion could get lost in the whole scheme of things. So is it more profitable to create fusion music? Creating good music to reach the wider audience is the key. Creating good and great music to the wider audience, whether it's fusion or not fusion, creating good music is the key. We're going to reach the wider audience eventually, but at some point in time, the small pond and big pond sort of poisons the whole thing. Nishad?
We did say hour and a half, so I don't know, but we discussed this thing. I don't know if people have some closing comments as we move forward, because I want to sort of give a commitment, because I want to drive this thing forward. I think it's important from a variety of points of view, right? As Mukesh says, it's politics, it's economics, I'll give a simple example. Just find when I was the first person actually to design a robot that plays the tabla. When we demonstrated first to Peter Telfer. Peter Telfer said to me, I was at UV then, he said, Doc, he says, you're getting a son for that, son funded. He proved to be prophetic. to today, I haven't gotten a cent, and it is a first worldwide. And I'm, I'm trying to take a page of what you do to say, hey, if this is so good, I'm going to try to commercialize it myself. It takes a long time, right? But I need to go that way. Whereas other people, and the point of culture, because it wasn't viewed as culture. Having learned my lesson, I'm working on a robotic band that plays a steel pan together with the tabla. So so it's a fusion of some sort, actually. Yeah? No, but I think these are things we need to keep the discussions going, and I would think really that the professional artists in the field, and you all are doing well yourselves. I mean, like you have the Ramnaran brothers, right? You have Prasad from Bharataria. A lot of people, and I think they need to get together in a platform to say, here, we are here also. We are bringing money to Trinidad also. If you work with us, right, as a culture, it can go a bit further, and Trinidad can be put on the map more in more places than in the diasporas, in Trinidadian diasporas in Europe and North America. But anyway, having said that, and any closing comments on a way forward to take this forward, because I think it's important from a variety of points of view that this be taken forward. We'll start the youngest man first, Nishad.
Yes, Professor, you mentioned the term a couple of times along the discussion, and it is a very important term, and that is national policy. I think there needs to be some sort of a concerted effort where we sit down and we analyze the needs of the art form. We sit down and we decide how we can really address the problems that we may be facing, how we could really adapt in order to progress in a positive way. And one of the ways that we need to do that firstly is by education. We need to make people aware of what is possible, of what you can achieve through music, of the places that music can take you. A lot of people they're stuck in this little box that like Ricky mentioned, he uses the example of the pond. But like he said, if you only concentrate on the small pond and you don't know the big pond exists, then you will never have that intention to get out of the small pond into the big pond. So what we need to do is we need to start educating people about the big pond, let them know the big pond exists and what the fishes in the big pond are doing, and the way that they're swimming, and the kind of food that they're eating, and this kind of thing. A lot of the younger artists now are part-time artists as well, for this very same reason, because I don't think they realize the potential of what music can do in terms of a career, in terms of financial success and that kind of thing. And I think if it is we are able to educate them, and we are speaking today specifically about the Indian culture. A lot of the Indian artists depend on live performances to make money. That is the main way that they make money. But music has shifted so much now that the really mainstream artists, they make the majority of their money from records and from sales and from digital distribution and that kind of thing. And these are terms that we need to get upcoming artists familiar with. We need to teach them about copyright. Apart from just writing melodies and how to write lyrics, we need to teach them the business of the music as well, and how they can be in a position to focus solely on their music and turn that into a full-time career, so that they're not just hustling a couple of gigs on the weekend or trying to just earn a couple of dollars. They are part of a bigger movement, like you say, to really take the culture forward in a very impactful way. Because at the end of the day, I strongly believe that our culture is what really gives us our international identity, because that is the only thing that is unique to us. Oil is not unique to us. Sports is not unique to us, but the music that comes out of Trinidad, the soca music, the chutney music, the fusion music, if you want to call it that, is something that is very unique to us. And that is really what is going to stamp our identity on an international scale. So back to the original point, the need for a national policy is definitely there to especially educate persons first and foremost. Before we can even get them interested, we need to educate them and let them know what is possible and what they can achieve. That's just my 2 cents. And I'll pass it over to the next panelist.
So, Rishi, you haven't said much, right? To maybe you can make some more elaborate closing comments.
Yeah, I was just listening to the guys. I know again, I have been working with Ricky from Existence.
And Nishad too.
And Nishan, I've learned a lot from Ricky. Change in the music. Yes, we had a hard time. When we made changes, sometimes it wasn't accepted, but you know, we stick at it and we reach there. But let me just touch a little bit on the traditional chutney music. Yes, Nishad was correct. It's really a dying art form. And I am one of the producers who take up the challenge to keep that art form alive. You know, I went to a little party last night. Rakesh Yankaran and Dubraj Prasad was singing, and I stood there. It had a lot of people, and I watching the crowd. You know, even me myself, I don't understand what these guys sing, but for some reason, when the Indian people hear these guys sing like maybe Mausi or Rangadal or whatever, I don't understand the language. And when Indian people hear these popular songs, it sends them in a frenzy, you know. And we really need to preserve this part of our culture. And yeah, Ricky and Nisha are right. We need to educate the younger ones coming up. I don't really agree with the using the Bollywood melodies and calling it chutney. I always say that I am very original. I learned this from Ricky. I learned this from a lot of producers that I work with at a younger stage of my career. Chutney is an art form where I believe we use our instrument, which is the dholak, the dantal, the harmonium, and we live in Trinidad and Tobago, the West Indies. So we incorporate the soca, which is the kick, the snare, the hi-hat. We have a certain swing that we incorporate to call it chutney and chutney soca. So, you know, we really need to get a platform where we can educate the younger ones and teach them and keep the music alive. Thank you.
Sarada?
My point is just to reiterate what everybody said. I think music composition, music education, and music business. Those are the things that we should be focusing on.
So, Mukesh? He's frozen on the screen, but I don't know if he's frozen audio-wise to Ganjam. No? Why don't you come on? Ricky, any closing comments?
You know, Professor, it's always nice to have these discussions. I'm hoping that, you know, we had one last year and we're having another one this year. I'm hoping that somewhere along the line, these discussions are recorded and passed on to other people, shared via YouTube or social media. And in some way or some fashion, some of what we have said will fall on someone's ear, and they will become aware of the plight of the average Indo-Trinbagonian entertainer. We face many challenges, as Mukesh may have said. You know, he went to sing Calypso, he was booed, he was pelted. I myself have experienced that, you know, going to Soca Monarch in 1998, having just one chutney Soca Monarch appearing as a guest, 7 minutes of pure orange peel, beer cans, and everything else. It's all good. You know, we all have to go through what we have to go through. But we as a people, Indian people, Indo-Trinbagonian people, we are more resilient than the average. We are able to withstand a lot more, and we are able to innovate and find a way through cracks and crevices where people may not think that, you know, we can get through. And, you know, while that may be good for some of us, that needs to change. The platform needs to be widened. The whole industry, as Nishad said, needs to be broadened. Education needs to be specific. People need to know, as he says, about, borrowing a melody from a Bollywood song. If people feel, you could just take the melody from Suhani Rat and write a new song on it without giving the proper copyright. But, education about, digital streaming, education about songwriting, the royalties, education about performing in festivals all over the world where music such as chutney soca is regarded as a world music. And I have traveled to many places in the world as a chutney soca ambassador. Over the years, I've done tours for the BBC, and Mangal has done the same. We have had other people who have traveled in Europe doing shows in places where it's not a West Indian diaspora. All of these things need to be brought into the same room. All of these things need to be brought into the same place. And, we need to form a team, a proper team, to train, to educate, to elevate, and to send out to the world. And that's the only way that, we can really and truly become successful at innovating our tradition.
Thank you. And, I really look forward to, the team here and others really moving forward on that, right? But I want to say just we are starting to take some small steps, because you said we met last year, meeting again this year. Since then, we have signed an MOU with Diwali Nagar, NCIC to be more particular, right? To start the archive some of these old songs, etc. I mean, right now, UTT has a very active program archiving Calypso and Panorama. And I've said, hey, we need to archive these other things also. So that is happening. Right? So that is going on. Not as much as I would like, but you have to start, right? The other thing is that we have a fair amount of facilities at UTT, recording, etc., etc. And that has not been made accessible to Indo-Trinidad. And I like that, I don't say Indian, Indo-Trinidadian, Trinidadian of Indian descent, to help in this process going forward. So, I want to give the commitment. This is not just talk on my behalf, that we are trying to take some steps forward, and we will look forward to support from you and others also. So as we go forward, so you will hear from us again, okay? And I want to sincerely thank you all for coming out there and speaking frankly. And it will be on YouTube. People tend to look at it. So
all right.
again, so great thanks again. Have a wonderful evening.